This is Aaron Golub, host of the Blind Ambition podcast. We'll be bringing you world-class leaders, entrepreneurs, and athletes, people who have overcome obstacles and used their ambition to create enormous success in their lives. If you enjoy this podcast, if you get anything out of it, the only thing I'll ever ask is that you subscribe, rate, and review. Hope you enjoy.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm joined by Darryll Stinson. Darryll, thank you so much for being here.
Man, thank you for having me. I'm excited. And I just say, if you are listening, tuning in right now, you might want to grab a pen and take notes because we want to add a ton of value. And if you're driving, don't take notes. Just focus on the road and listen because we don't want accidents.
So for those of you who don't know Darryll is a speaker, an ex football player, and the founder of Second Chance Athletes. Why don't you tell me about your journey, kind of post football into the entrepreneurial world?
Yeah. So post football would be, so after I had this turnaround in the psychiatric unit, I started to really get hungry to understand what my life's purpose was. So I lived in the library for like 2 straight years, reading, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning and Rick Warren's Purpose Driven Life and Simon Sinek's Why, like anything I could find on purpose, identity, meaning, like it didn't matter which faith it was from or which philosophy it had. I just wanted to study it all. And so I did that for about 2 years just as a hermit, man. And I was working at a carpet cleaning company and I worked for Verizon as a sales representative for a little while, trying to find something in my profession. And then I feel like I got to a place where I found a purpose that was unique to me, something that was, you couldn't say it about anybody else in the world. And that's one of my core beliefs I have is that, your purpose is not your career. Your career is what you do. Your purpose is why you do it. And there's a purpose that is unique to you because when you look at your fingerprint, there's not another one like it. And I believe someone can look at a purpose statement about your life and say, that's Aaron, that's Jessica, that's Susie, that's Darryll. So I developed that purpose statement for my life. And then I got into marketing and my degrees in integrated public relations. And so part of that is it's basically a mixture of broadcasting, journalism, and marketing. And so I went into work for Central Michigan, which was my alma mater, to serve as a marketing professional on the communications team, and had some success there. We won number 3 in higher education marketing for the Put Your Stamp on the World campaign, and then number 1 in higher education email newsletter. And then I was able to oversee department-wide offensive melt initiative. And I took that success and launched my own marketing consulting company. It was basically like me speaking and then contracting out additional services when they needed, specialized branding and marketing support. And so I did that for about 2 years, and along with some donor development work for United Way. And then I shifted into pastoral ministry, did that for 3 years, revitalized the church from 17 people, all 65 and older. Their age wasn't a problem. It was their mentality. They got mad because we moved the colors on the wall. So we had to renew that and we're able to be successful and become leaders in that community. And then in 2017, my wife and I moved from Saginaw, Michigan, where we were at pastoring, down to Metro Atlanta, Georgia. And that's when I launched Second Chance Athletes and got into helping athletes transition out of sports and started to share my story more as a mental health speaker.
And so let's dive into that. Your journey with Second Chance Athletes, your journey as a speaker. What sparked that? Why did you start it? And how has it impacted the lives of others?
Yeah. So number one, when I got to this place in my life, probably about 4 to 5 years after my transition out of sports, I noticed that I was so excited about my future, and that wasn't a common experience for many other of my peers that I knew that were athletes. So here I am asking them about their work, and they're like, yeah, I got this going on. I got this going on. It's kind of like this even tone energy level. And then I would say, well, we get to talking about sports and the playing days. And it's like, oh man, you remember when then, you remember that. Ah, ah, ah. It's like all this excitement.
Yeah.
And they were more excited about their past than they were looking forward to their future. And there's just literally this term in our sports industry called the glory days. And think about what that means. that literally means there was a period in your life that's so much better than right now or
Yeah.
your future. And so I didn't believe that any athlete should live their current life as if it was second best to their former life
Yeah.
as an athlete. And so I wanted to help. So I literally just one day I was just like, how did I get here? You know? And I sat down in front of a whiteboard and I just started to like write down everything I learned, everything I did to get there. And I started to say, well, okay, this is like, these were phases that I went through of
Yeah.
transition. Okay. First, I had to accept that it was over. Then I had to believe that there's a brighter future. Then I had to purpose discovery and all that stuff I mentioned. Then I had to actually go achieve it and pursue it. And then I had to persist. And that became our athletes transition roadmap and the process that we walk athletes through. So that was really how I did it.
That's awesome. And I'm sure it's impacted a lot of lives already, but talk about any experiences, any notable athletes that you've really helped change their lives.
Yeah, I have so many stories, man. One of my most recent favorite ones is you know, I got, she's a very successful athlete, is the best I can say, because of
Yeah.
confidentiality reasons, but doesn't need a dollar. Hasn't worked since her sports career and has been out transitioned out for 15 plus years. She saw a blog post we did or something, purchased the book, read the book, and sent me an email and was like, "Hey, I love to chat." And I was like, "Okay, cool, cool." And I love to chat with this person. I'm all excited. It's
Yeah.
former like really prestigious athlete who still has some world records. And so I call her on the phone and she goes, "Hey, so yeah, I think I need help." Like I never thought about the fact that, I'm kind of living my life as if like it's all downhill from here, like my athletic career is where I peaked, you know.
Yeah.
And she became a client and we started coaching her through the process. And she's shifting back into speaking in a more powerful way. And it's just one of my favorite stories because she's older, and it just goes to show that it's not about age, it's about transition. It's about doing the deep inner work before you just go to the next thing. It's about having the mentality that your best days truly are ahead of you. So that's one of my favorite ones, man. And I'll give you one more, uh, because sometimes awareness is an issue for people. So we do live show, which you're going to be on soon. And we were doing one of those things, interviewing an athlete about their transition out of sports, and somebody shoots us a DM and they go, hey, I, I really want to talk to you. So I'm like, okay, picked up the phone. She said, you have no clue how much this means to me. She said, I've been wondering why I've been feeling so depressed, and I didn't know it's because of sports missing from my life. And when I saw your video and heard your conversation, like
Hmm.
I knew that I was like, that's exactly what I'm struggling with. I'm exactly what I'm struggling with. And I'm literally at work in the middle of the day crying my eyes out. And then when I'm crying, my coworkers came over to me and they were like, hey, what's going on? And I just told them, like, this is exactly my problem. This is what I've been struggling
Yeah.
with. This is why I haven't been feeling like myself. And then my coworker started crying. I'm like, well, why are you crying? And she was like, my husband has been going through a hard time. He's been trying to tell me that it's because of his athletic career. And I haven't been listening because I was like, what do you have to whine or complain about? Like, you were a
Yeah.
successful athlete. And she was like, now I feel terrible, like a terrible person.
Yeah.
And she sent him my video and he was able to get. So it's like this web of people that were helped from one experience. And so that's one of my favorite ones as well.
That's awesome. And from there, you've led it into a successful speaking career and now helping others. What prompted you? How have you, succeeded as a speaker?
Yeah.
What are some of the stages you've been able to be on? Any tips for up and coming speakers? And let's dive into that a little bit.
Oh man, that's fun. So it's helpful to know where I started because I'm decently well spoken now. I was terrible in 2012, right? But I knew that I had a calling to express my purpose through speaking, right? I knew that was supposed to be a part of my future, but I was so insecure. I was so bad that you know what an icebreaker is?
Yep.
Yeah, so like go around the room and say your name and where you're from, that type of thing. I used to get so nervous that I would fake like I had to go to the bathroom so that I could have them skip my turn. That's how bad I was. I just released a video, I don't know, a couple weeks ago about a time where I did uh, a former Pro Bowler. I'm saying Pro Bowler. That's not his name. He wasn't a Pro Bowler. He was a All-American athlete, and he has an organization called Power of Dad. And he invited me to speak to his youth. And I was so nervous that I literally wrote out word for word what I was supposed to say, spoke it into a recorder, and then wore a hoodie during the speaking engagement, put one headphone on one side of my ear so that they couldn't see that the headphone was hanging. It kind of looked like I just left it up there, and I literally recited word for word what was on the recorder. And what I didn't know is that in real time, I speak a lot faster than what I was reading on the recording. So I got off sync. I literally started repeating sentences. And they
Oh
were
God.
looking at me like I was crazy. And Brian Pruitt's his name. And he was looking at me like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed I brought this guy in. That's where I started. I say that because even in my book, I mentioned, don't let your lack of skill make you doubt a calling you have.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where I started. So how did I get better? Number one, I realized that I was changing my mindset about the stage when it really was no different than you and I talking right now, than me talking to my mother, than me talking to my best friend. A lot of people say, I'm so afraid of public speaking. I get so nervous. I get so this. I was like, it's because you see the stage different than the conversation you have with your friend. And so can you talk to your friend for hours and hours? Absolutely. And then you can speak from stage. So
Yeah.
let's change your mindset. In fact, how about you treat, and I did this literally for a whole month, I treated every conversation as if it was an opportunity to speak to an audience. Now, I didn't like drop quotes and bombs and stuff, but I thought that way with that mentality. So that way, when I got on a stage in front of people, it really didn't feel any different.
Hmm.
The other thing that happened, and I'll just sum this story up, but basically I used to come behind an MC for a very good speaker, and I reached out to somebody who did the same and asked him, does he struggle with insecurity? Because this guy would just do such a great job, and then I would come up behind him and just mess it all up and suck the energy out of the room. So I asked this other guy, like, how do you follow a great speaker? He said, I used to struggle with that until I figured out that I was focusing too much on trying to be impressive and not enough on trying to be helpful. And that set me free,
That's so
because
important.
that was my problem. I was too busy trying to impress. I was too busy trying to say some tweetable statement. I was
Yeah.
too busy trying to look good. I was too busy trying to sound good and have the presentation all together. I was so worried about my ego and my presentation and all of that I was missing the main point of speaking, which is to help somebody.
That's so important, because as soon as you get rid of the ego and you stop focusing on being impressive, you stop caring about what other people think, and you focus on how can I help others? How can I serve others? How can I make an impact on one other person's life today? You don't care about how it comes out because you don't care about others' opinions. And because you have that mentality that you're going in there to help, to serve, to impact someone's life, it's automatically going to be that much better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. And so that was a shift that I had to make. And obviously I'm still speaking, I'm still getting better and better and getting better with practice. And then the next pivot that I had is is learning how to be my authentic self. So I was studying a lot of speakers, their models, their teaching process, which I learned a lot. But until I found out how I communicate best and gave myself permission to be me, and I know that seems like an
Yeah.
abstract thing, but to me that's the most important thing. It's just the freedom to speak. And I'll give you an example, right? I've got this really high pitched laugh, which is kind of embarrassing because I'm like a big 6'5" former
Yeah.
football player, and I'm supposed to
Yeah.
have like a chuckle, you know.
Yeah.
But when I laugh, it's like right. And I would be so scared to like get really in the flow and laugh like that during my speech that it would make me lose my train of thought, because I was just trying to contain myself instead of being authentic and like keep up this facade as if I'm this professional and this tough guy and this guy that's serious and knows marketing.
Yeah.
And then I got up there, man. I'll never forget the time where I just let myself loose. And once I crossed that barrier and was my authentic self, it felt so freeing. I wanted to do it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
And with that, like so many people, because the people's biggest fear when you're on stage is you're going to embarrass yourself. People are going to think poorly of you. They're never going to hear you talk again. You know,
Yeah.
that's your biggest fear. And so if you go on stage, and it's one thing that I've learned from watching some people, and obviously not everyone does this, but if you just go on stage and, for example, say you're insecure about your laugh or something, you get on stage and just automatically just do your laugh.
Yeah.
Great. You can't be more embarrassed from there. You can't go any lower. go kill the speech. Who cares?
Yeah. Just get it out the way. Get it out the way. Like just and that was another thing too. The self-talk that you have to change because you live out the story you tell yourself. So if you're telling yourself, I'm not a good public speaker, if you tell yourself, I'm afraid, I got stage fright, if you tell yourself, I'm not really that good, then that is the story that's going to play out in your life. So you have to begin to tell yourself, you know what? I have a story to share. I can be helpful to somebody. My voice does matter. I
Yep.
have value. I'm good enough. Because let me tell you something. There's no amount of money, no amount of speaking engagements, no amount of affirmation of others that's going to override your view of yourself. So it starts internally
Yep.
with believing in you.
That's so important. And so many people just don't get there. And I think that's something that's really limiting, is that limiting belief. One thing that I like to believe is I know I'm one of the best speakers in the world. That's just not the most discovered yet.
Yeah.
And by that point, I'm, in my opinion, I'm a phenomenal speaker and I'm one of the best there is. But am I a brand name yet? Do people think of me as they do, Les Brown, Eric Thomas, Tony Robbins? No, they don't. Am I making that type of money from speaking? No, I'm not. But you know what? In 15 years from now, when everyone knows my name, will I be? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, dude. And I'm actually glad you brought that up. And this is not a promo or anything. I don't know when this is going to release, so it might already be after it. But that is exactly why I formed my mastermind, because that's how I felt. Right. Like I'm looking at these people that are getting 10 and 20 and 40 and 50K to speak. And I'm like, they're not even that great. And I'm sitting here like, well, hold on, man. I need to figure out how to get the difference between them and me is that they just had a really established brand and they had more exposure. But
Yeah.
I'm like from a skill set to speak, from like I actually added value and created transformation in somebody's life using my voice and my story. Like I felt like I was better. Like,
Yeah.
and so I was like, I know there's a lot of people out there who feel the same way. And so like, how did I shift from, being undiscovered to being discovered to not really having opportunities to getting paid opportunities
Yeah.
to feeling like my voice didn't matter to doing 2 TEDx and now I'm going to be doing my 3rd this year. Like how
Yeah.
did that happen? Right. And part of it is some of the things we talked about, but then knowing that there's a difference between the skill of speaking and the business of speaking. And some
100%.
people think because they have a good story, because they have a good skill, that they can make it in the industry. And you need both. You need a good story. And I'll tell you what, there's people that know the business who don't have the skill and they need to get out the way.
Yeah.
And so I want to bring the people who have the skill but don't know the business into the forefront, because at the end of the day, we speak to change lives. We speak to, for me, like with my story of overcoming depression and suicide attempts, like I speak to stop somebody from throwing in the towel. So the more exposure I can have to my message and my mission, the more impact I can have. The more impact I have in someone else's life, the more free they are to impact others. It's like a rising tide raises all ships. And so I'm so excited to help people through that process, man, because it's so important.
Yeah. No, 100%. And since you brought it up, let's backtrack a little. Going into your battle with depression, your battle with suicide. What if you can go into a little detail, discuss what do you think got you out of that? How did you overcome that? And for anyone who is going through that, what would you suggest to them?
Um, do as I say, not as I did. I did everything wrong. I didn't tell anybody. I threw half-hearted hints out there that I was really struggling. Like I wasn't fully transparent. And I always say, um, you have to be fully known to be fully loved. Vulnerability is like a Batman signal for love. The more vulnerable you are, the more love you experience. And so I wasn't being vulnerable at all. I was just kind of, having a rough day. So nobody really loved me like I needed that love. And I went darker and darker and darker. And then I turned to drugs. And, I started having suicidal thoughts. I never told anybody. And then there was one person who I confided in, which was my girlfriend, who I had dated for 4.5 years, was planning to marry. We had our kids' name picked out and all this stuff. I call her one day when I'm in the car and getting high on all types of drugs and thinking about ending it. And I'm like, hey, can you come help me? I'd love to, see you. I really need some help and support. And she's talking to me like, yeah, it's going to be okay, Darryll. And she never calls me by my name. Like she calls me babe or hun or something. So I'm like, what's going on? So I like got mad, hung up the phone. I started calling all her friends. Long story short, I found out that she actually had left me and got engaged to another man. And I didn't know yet. So sports was going on in my life, and my girlfriend was going on in my life, and I didn't think that I mattered. And so my advice, and so basically what happened to me is I hit rock bottom, and I attempted suicide multiple times, and I ended up in the psychiatric unit. And when I was in the psychiatric unit, I had a complete like faith encounter that gave me something dangerous called hope. You see, when you're depressed, you feel hopeless and helpless. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. All you see is pain forward and pain from behind. That's what I felt. So a couple of things that I tell people if they're in that low place is, number one, be vulnerable. Don't say, I'm having a rough time if you are legitimately depressed. Don't say I'm depressed if you are having suicidal thoughts. Those are different degrees of mental health challenges. Like, be transparent so that people can run to you, right? Ask for help, right? You can still be Superman or Superwoman and have kryptonite. You can still battle. Look, let me tell you something. Look, I am a two-time TEDx speaker, getting ready to be three. My book's bestseller, got some crazy endorsements. David Meltzer, Jack Canfield, who has sold the most books out of any human on the planet besides the Bible. Like I've got some crazy connections and all that stuff. But let me tell you something. I still see a counselor. I still take antidepressants. Do you see?
Yeah.
And there's people who, if they have to see a counselor or take antidepressants, they feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the scum of the earth. And it does not. In fact, I think about every movie that you watch that you really love. I'm talking about like Rocky. Everybody loves when a hero or a figure in a movie is getting all odds thrown against them and they still rise up despite getting knocked out. That is the proper view to have of someone who's struggling with mental health. So if you have those issues, you have to see yourself like Rocky, getting knocked down and getting back up, getting knocked down and getting back up, getting knocked down and getting back up, because it takes more strength to keep living when everything in you wants to quit than it does to throw in the towel. So you're actually not weak because you struggle. You are strong because you survive.
100%. That's so important. Wow. Just amazing. Appreciate you sharing that.
No problem, man.
Just to, in the last few minutes here, what advice, if someone had 2-3 minutes with you and they were, whatever situation, whether it be someone who needs help, whether it be someone who's looking to grow as an entrepreneur, and they said, if you could give me one piece of advice that you've learned throughout your life, what would you give them?
You're enough. Everything you want, desire in your life is going to stem from your view and your belief in yourself. And that's great news, because the moment you decide to believe in you, to cheer for you, to be your best cheerleader and not your worst critic, everything will change.
Yeah. That's awesome. Wow. Incredible. Where can everyone find you? Where can they, get in touch with you and all of that on social media, any websites, things like that?
Yeah, man. I always say, like, there's two different degrees of people. There's people that are like, hey, man, I connect with you on a deep level. I want to work with you, that type of thing. Just shoot me an email, Darryll, DARRYLL at secondchanceathletes.com, or shoot me a DM on social at Stinson Speaks, STINSON Speaks. And then, man, I've got all types of free guides and free stuff, YouTube. You can just follow at a distance, be a social media stalker. Like, it doesn't matter. Like be a fan, right? And that's it, man. That's how you connect with me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on, and I really appreciate it. I know my audience will as well.
Awesome, man. Thank you for listening. Thank you for this opportunity. And I just pray that, when you guys listen to this, I hope that you feel inspired, and I hope that you find one thing that you can apply immediately to your life, because information without application does not lead to transformation.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it at all, if you got one thing out of it, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you.